Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on something quite specific, the immediate public reaction right here in the U.S. following those recent American strikes on nuclear sites in Iran. We've got some interesting source material, particularly excerpts focused on what they call U.S. bombing protests.
Exactly. And our goal here really is to go a step beyond just noting that protests happened.
Yeah.
We want to kind of distill the main characteristics, the extent of these protests based only on what these sources tell us. How did they actually play out?
Right. It's about getting the essence. And for anyone looking to quickly understand the core of that public response, what really defined it according to these documents, we should have some key details for you. So let's just jump in. One of the first things that struck me reading this was the term widespread. It wasn't just like one place. The sources mentioned New York and other U.S. cities and even various cities nationwide. What does that tell us, that emphasis on breadth?
Well, it really paints a picture of a significant, almost immediate reaction across the country. Mm-hmm. It suggests that the news either sparked a very broad shared sentiment or perhaps that people mobilized very quickly in different places. It wasn't isolated.
Okay, so a broad reaction. But did the sources give us a more visual anchor, like a specific place that really stood out?
They did. New York City comes up, and very specifically Times Square is mentioned. And it's noted as a site of peaceful protest.
Times Square. Wow. That's a huge stage, symbolically speaking.
Exactly. Choosing a place like Times Square, according to the source, suggests a real push for visibility, making a statement where the world is watching,
Makes sense. And you mentioned peaceful. The sources seem quite clear on the nature of these demonstrations.
Yes, very clear. The term peaceful is used pointedly. It suggests these weren't chaotic riots, but rather organized, nonviolent expressions of condemnation. That focus on peacefulness often aims to keep the focus on the message itself.
Right.
Rather than on any conflict.
Right, preserving the message. So, okay, we have this picture, widespread, iconic locations like Times Square and peaceful, but what were people actually doing? How did the sources describe their actions?
The descriptions are quite vivid, actually. They talk about crowds marching in the streets of New York. They mention people carrying signs and flags.
Okay, signs and flags, visual messaging. Anything else?
And chanting. So you have movement, visual symbols, and audible collective expression. Marching shows unity. The signs carry slogans. The chanting creates this powerful group voice, all very active forms of protest detailed in the material.
And all these actions, the marching, the signs, the chanting, what was the single unifying point they were making according to the sources?
The sources state it very directly. The core message was condemning the American strike on nuclear sites in Iran. There's no ambiguity reported. Everything described seems funneled towards that specific condemnation of the military action. So pulling it all together from this source material, what we see is a picture of a widespread public response. It's characterized as peaceful, highly visible, think Times Square, and involving these tangible actions, marching, signs, flags, chanting, and all of it, according to the sources, aimed at condemning those specific U.S. strikes. It's a snapshot of that particular moment.
Absolutely. And thinking about that snapshot, given these details, the peaceful assembly, the use of signs, flags, chanting, very public spaces like Times Square, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does this specific example, as described in our sources, tell us about the common ways people in a democracy tend to voice dissent, especially about foreign policy or military actions? When you reflect on this kind of reported response, what does it reveal about the enduring tools citizens use to make sure their views are heard? Something to think about.